Imagine like walking into a massive ballroom, and instead of your eyes adjusting to this sea of blinding, predictable white, you step directly into a kaleidoscope,
Oh, wow.
right? The walls are bathed in this deep rolling amber. The tables are anchored by these sprawling, unstructured bursts of ruby and terracotta.
And it completely changes the energy in the room.
It really does. You look up, and the ceiling is just this suspended forest of emerald greens and rich golds. Before you even, speak to a single person, that room has already told you an incredibly loud, intensely specific story about the people who invited you there.
Because it completely disrupts your expectations, right, of what a formal event is supposed to feel like.
Totally.
We are so heavily conditioned to associate elegance with visual silence.
We really are. I mean, think about traditional event design, especially weddings. The default setting has always been restraint. Crisp ivory tablecloths, pale blush roses, clear glass.
Very safe.
Exactly. Very safe. The underlying philosophy seemed to be that if you neutralize the environment, you elevate the formality. Like you strip the color away so nobody's eyes are offended.
Right. The absence of color was treated as the ultimate signifier of sophistication. But, that visual silence is ending. We are tracking a massive movement away from those muted, whisper-quiet aesthetics.
Which is honestly so refreshing.
It is. And we're moving towards spaces that are hyper-personalized and just intensely vibrant.
Which is exactly what brings us to today's deep dive. Welcome in, everyone. It is Wednesday, July 15th, 2026, and we are unpacking a major paradigm shift in event design.
Yes, we are.
Our source material today is this incredible comprehensive guide from Weddizer, which, if you know, is a massive hub for event planning and inspiration. The guide is titled All the Colors, Eclectic Palette Ideas for Stylish and Unforgettable Wedding Celebrations.
Very fitting title.
Right. And the mission for us today is to figure out the actual mechanics of this trend. Because, in theory, taking every color of the rainbow and just throwing it into a single venue sounds like a recipe for a chaotic, overstimulating mess.
Oh, it sounds like a children's birthday party if it isn't handled with extreme discipline.
Exactly.
The Weddizer Guide acts as a sort of manifesto for this new era, but it's also a highly technical blueprint. It shows how modern couples are completely ditching those traditional neutral tones in favor of these eclectic palettes.
Without the event turning into an absolute circus.
Right, exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this. Before we get into the how, I really want to theorize on the why. If the ivory ballroom was essentially a blank canvas, this new all the colors movement feels like curating a modern art gallery.
That's a great way to look at it.
But I have to wonder if a lot of this is just reactionary? Are people just throwing every color at the wall to see what sticks? Is this just a post-pandemic urge to rebel against tradition for the sake of being loud?
Well, what's fascinating here is that the Weddizer Guide points to something much more fundamental than just rebellion. It's not random at all.
Okay.
It really comes down to a desire for complete creative freedom and authentic storytelling. I mean, an all-white room is a beautiful template, but it's still just a template.
Right.
It doesn't communicate anything about a couple's cultural background, their personal histories, or their specific shared identity.
I see. So if the room is white, the venue is the star. But if the room is layered in specific, vibrant hues, the couple's identity becomes the star.
Precisely. The environment becomes an extension of their personality. And there's a very modern, practical catalyst driving this as well. We live in an inherently visual, image-driven culture.
Oh, for sure. Everything is on Instagram or TikTok.
Exactly. People want highly immersive guest experiences that translate beautifully into dynamic, editorial-style photography.
That makes a lot of sense.
But because this approach is so deeply tied to identity and complex storytelling, it demands a highly disciplined approach to color theory.
And that structural approach is what fascinates me. If we look at the anatomy of an eclectic palette, it feels remarkably similar to audio mixing.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah, if you think about a music track, you don't just push every single fader on the soundboard up to maximum volume. If you do that, the speakers blow out and all you hear is static. You need a bass track to anchor the song, and then you layer your treble and your midtones around it so they complement each other instead of just competing.
That is a perfect comparison.
Right. It's like building a flavor profile in cooking. You don't just dump all the spices from your cabinet into the pot. So applied to visual design, what is our bass track here?
Your bass track is your dominant color. The guide establishes a strict mathematical rule of thumb to prevent that visual static you just described.
Okay, what's the rule?
You select one single dominant color, and then you layer in 2 to 4 complementary accent colors. That is your equalization.
One dominant, two to four accents. That sets up a really clear visual hierarchy.
It creates harmony by letting one hue lead the conversation while the accents provide depth. And, understanding how these colors interact on the color wheel is absolutely critical here.
How so?
Well, when you place complementary colors, like a deep sapphire blue and a vibrant burnt orange next to each other, you trigger something in the human eye called simultaneous contrast.
Wait, simultaneous contrast. So the colors are actually altering how our brains perceive them.
Exactly. The colors don't physically change, obviously, but because they sit on opposite ends of the visual spectrum, the cones in your eyes process them in a way that makes each color appear far more intense and luminous.
More than if it were just standing alone against a white wall.
Way more.
That explains why the groupings, Weddizer highlights feel so specific. Like they aren't just saying use blue and red, they categorize them to control that contrast.
Yes, they break it down beautifully.
They mention jewel tones, which are your emerald greens, sapphire blues, ruby reds, and amethyst purples.
Such a luxurious combination.
Yeah. Then you have soft pastels like lavender, peach, powder blue, mint green, and they're earthy neutrals. Terracottas, olive greens, warm sands, warm beige.
And don't forget the bold accents, your mustard yellows, corals, hot pinks, turquoise, burnt orange.
Right. But the crucial underlying principle before you even start mixing those categories is establishing your color story or your mood, like romantic, artistic, vintage, modern luxury, bohemian, garden-inspired.
Because the mood is the master equalizer.
Let me test that theory. If I choose, say, hot pink and turquoise, but I want a vintage mood, the vibrancy of those colors is going to actively fight the nostalgia of the story I'm trying to tell, right?
Oh, absolutely. They would clash terribly.
I'd probably need to desaturate them into soft pastels to make the vintage mood work.
Spot on. The mood dictates the application. If your chosen mood is modern luxury, an emerald green might be applied via sleek, polished surfaces.
Right.
But if the mood is bohemian, that exact same emerald green needs to appear in organic, woven materials.
Yeah.
The palette provides the raw materials, but the mood is the architectural blueprint.
So what does this all mean for the actual execution? Like, how does that blueprint survive contact with reality? We have our dominant color, our accents, we understand simultaneous contrast.
Right.
But when we start translating this into physical objects in a physical space, a reception tablescape, my anxiety spikes. Does the dining table just look like a rainbow exploded over it?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is where we introduce the concept of texture.
Texture. Okay.
The Weddizer source is adamant that translating a bold palette to a physical space requires mixing textures just as rigorously as you mix colors. It creates depth and intentionality rather than chaos.
Let me see if I can visualize that. If we think about how materials absorb light, if I have a flat, smooth yellow plastic chair next to a flat, smooth yellow table, it feels cheap.
Extremely cheap.
It feels like a fast food restaurant because the light is just bouncing off it uniformly. But if I swap that plastic chair for a plush yellow velvet sofa,
The entire perception of the color shifts.
because velvet has a physical pile to it. It has thousands of tiny threads that trap the light, creating these micro shadows. The yellow becomes rich, deep, and luxurious.
Exactly. Texture breaks up the visual weight. If you have a flat wall of color, it's jarring. But when you introduce a patterned linen and pair it with heavy cut glass goblets and add a heavily woven napkin,
The light refracts differently off every single surface.
yes, you are building a three-dimensional environment rather than a flat, overwhelming block of pigment.
That makes perfect sense. The light creates shadow and depth, which stops the colors from just bleeding into one another.
And the guide points out that florals are really the anchor for this layered approach.
Oh, moving away from perfect matching.
The days of those perfectly spherical, tightly packed domes of single-color roses sitting in the middle of a table, they are officially over.
Right. They look manufactured.
Completely obsolete in this design school. The modern eclectic approach relies on layering diverse, colorful blooms. We're talking garden roses, peonies, dahlias, ranunculus.
Orchids, tulips, delphiniums, and even wildflowers, right?
Exactly. The designers are deliberately varying the stem lengths and the bloom sizes to create structural shadows and varieties of texture.
So it looks like it actually grew there. It's an idealized, hyper-vibrant slice of nature.
And that organic, sprawling structure is what anchors the tablescape. But the guide establishes a non-negotiable rule here.
Which is?
The florals must strictly coordinate with the linens. If your table linen carries your dominant base track color, your floral centerpiece needs to act as the treble pulling in those 2 to 4 accent colors.
Ah, they cannot be competing for dominance.
Exactly. You're balancing the EQ of the table. You mix the patterned linens, the colored glassware, the gold flatware, bright candles, textured napkins. It all has to coordinate.
And the designers aren't just keeping this on the tables, they're pulling these concepts up into the air. The guide talks about creative ceiling installations, right?
Oh, yes. Suspending hanging florals, paper lanterns, ribbon installations.
Draped fabrics, and colorful lighting to add depth.
By drawing the eye upward, you change the scale of the room. You remove the blank space of the ceiling, turning the venue into a fully immersive 360-degree environment.
Okay, so the room is acting like a beautifully balanced, complex audio mix. But here's where it gets really interesting. I have a gentle pushback.
Okay, let's hear it.
What happens when the people inside that room start moving through it? Because the guide takes this concept beyond just the decor and applies it to the couple themselves. It talks about bridal and groom fashion.
Yes, the personal touch.
I can fully wrap my head around an olive green and terracotta tablescape looking stunning. But when the guide suggests ombre veils, vibrant reception dresses, colorful shoes, floral embroidery,
And patterned jackets or colored tuxedos for the groom.
right, a velvet blazer or a floral tie, my brain immediately goes to a costume party. How do you put someone in a bright turquoise velvet tuxedo